Meditations. The Stoic Path to Unshakable Inner Power. Marcus Aurelius. Brought to you by Hyptoria.
You're about to hear something that was never meant for your ears. The private thoughts of the most powerful man who ever lived, written in moments of his deepest despair. While plague ravaged his empire, and enemies gathered at his borders, Marcus Aurelius sat alone in his tent and wrote himself notes on how to stay sane. Not speeches for the Senate or proclamations for his subjects, but desperate reminders to his own soul. How to find courage when terrifying, peace when surrounded by chaos, hope when everything was falling apart. These weren't written by a comfortable philosopher, theorizing about life's challenges. This was a man watching his children die, feeling the weight of millions of lives in his hands, facing the collapse of everything he'd built, and still somehow finding the strength to choose wisdom over despair, duty over escape. He never imagined these midnight confessions would survive him, much less guide countless others through their own darkness. What you're about to hear is the most honest conversation ever recorded between a human being and their own conscience. No pretense, no performance, just the raw strategies that kept the ruler of the known world from breaking under pressure that would crush most people in minutes. His whispered wisdom has already transformed emperors and slaves, soldiers and scholars. Now it's your turn to discover why these ancient secrets still hold the power to forge unshakable inner strength in anyone brave enough to listen. Part 1. Laying the Foundation. Chapter 1. The Respect Revolution. Every person you encounter is simultaneously your teacher and your student, whether they realize it or not. This isn't New Age mysticism, it's practical psychology. Understanding this principle will transform how you navigate relationships, handle conflict, and learn from experience. Consider the most patient person you know. How did they develop that quality? Not through reading about patience, but through countless interactions with impatient people, difficult circumstances, and their own reactive tendencies. Their calmness is earned wisdom, forged through experience and conscious choice. Now think about the most anxious person in your life. What can they teach you? Perhaps they show you what happens when worry becomes a dominant life strategy. Maybe they demonstrate how fear can paralyze decision-making. Their struggle, while painful to watch, provides valuable information about paths you don't want to follow. Most people miss these lessons because they're focused on judging rather than learning. They categorize others as good or bad, helpful or annoying, without recognizing the growth opportunities embedded in every interaction. Here's how to implement the respect revolution in your daily life. The learning question. Instead of asking, "Why is this person so difficult?" ask, "What is this interaction teaching me?" The shift from judgment to curiosity immediately changes your emotional state and opens possibilities for growth. The mirror practice. When someone's behavior triggers a strong reaction in you, use it as a mirror. What does your reaction reveal about your own sensitivities, expectations, or unresolved issues? The people who annoy us most often reflect qualities we dislike about ourselves. The gratitude twist. At the end of each day, identify one person who challenged you and find something to appreciate about that interaction. Maybe their impatience taught you about your own capacity for calm. Perhaps their negativity reminded you to guard your own mental environment more carefully. The patience training. View difficult people as unwitting trainers in emotional regulation. The clerk who moves slowly, the driver who cuts you off, the colleague who complains constantly. They're all providing free education in maintaining your center despite external irritation. This doesn't mean becoming a doormat or accepting poor treatment. It means recognizing that every interaction offers data about human nature, including your own. The person who can learn from everyone becomes unstoppable because they're constantly growing, adapting, and developing new capacities. Consider Maria, a manager I know who transformed her relationship with a chronically negative employee using these principles. Instead of feeling frustrated by his constant complaints, she began studying his behavior patterns. She noticed he was most negative when feeling overwhelmed or unappreciated. This insight allowed her to address root causes rather than just symptoms. She started giving him more specific feedback on his contributions and breaking large projects into smaller, manageable pieces. His negativity decreased significantly, and Maria developed better leadership skills through the process. The respect revolution doesn't require you to like everyone or agree with their choices. It simply asks you to recognize the learning opportunity present in every human encounter. This perspective transforms relationships from sources of frustration into resources for development.
Chapter 2. The Authority of Inner Direction.
The strongest people you know share one crucial characteristic. They've learned to trust their own judgment more than the crowd's opinion. They've developed what philosophers call internal authority, the ability to make decisions based on principles rather than pressure. Think about the last time you made a choice primarily to please others rather than following your instincts. How did that work out? Most people spend their entire lives trying to manage other people's opinions of them, exhausting themselves in a game they can never truly win. The problem with external validation as a primary motivation is threefold. First, other people's opinions are largely based on incomplete information about your situation, values, and goals. Second, trying to please everyone simultaneously is mathematically impossible. What satisfies one person often disappoints another. Third, basing your decisions on others' approval keeps you perpetually dependent on external conditions for internal peace. Internal authority doesn't mean being stubborn, arrogant, or refusing to consider input from others. It means developing enough self-knowledge to distinguish between helpful advice and meaningless noise. It means being confident enough in your values to make unpopular decisions when necessary. Building internal authority. A progressive training program. Week 1. Small, authentic choices. Start making minor decisions based purely on what feels right to you, regardless of what others might think. Choose the restaurant you actually want to visit, rather than the one you think will impress your companion. Wear clothes that make you feel comfortable, rather than those you think look impressive. Express opinions that reflect your genuine thoughts, rather than what you think people want to hear. Week 2. Values clarification. Identify your core values by examining moments when you felt most proud of your decisions and times when you felt most disappointed in yourself. What principles were you honoring or violating in those situations? Write down your top 5 values and use them as decision-making criteria for the rest of the week. Week 3. Pressure testing. Practice maintaining your position when others disagree without becoming defensive or aggressive. Start with low-stakes situations where you have a clear preference that differs from the group. Practice saying things like, "I see your point, but I prefer," or "That works for you, but I'm going to choose." Week 4. Boundary setting. Begin saying no to requests that don't align with your priorities or values, even when saying yes would be easier in the short term. Practice responding to guilt trips or pressure tactics with calm firmness rather than defensive explanations. The goal isn't to become rigid or closed to input, but to develop enough inner stability that you can consider others' perspectives without being thrown off course by them. You want to reach the point where you can appreciate advice without feeling compelled to follow it, where you can remain open to influence without being controlled by it. Sarah, a marketing executive, discovered the power of internal authority when she stopped automatically agreeing to every project her boss suggested. Instead of saying yes immediately, she began responding with, "Let me review my current commitments and get back to you." This simple pause allowed her to evaluate new projects against her career goals and current workload. Her boss initially seemed surprised by this approach, but quickly came to respect her thoughtfulness. Her work quality improved because she was no longer overcommitted, and her job satisfaction increased because she felt more control over her professional direction. Internal authority is like a muscle. It grows stronger with exercise. Each time you make a decision based on your own judgment rather than external pressure, you increase your capacity to trust yourself in more important matters. Each time you choose authenticity over approval, you build the confidence to handle bigger challenges independently. The ultimate goal is reaching a state where you can receive criticism without being devastated, praise without becoming dependent, and pressure without losing your center. This doesn't happen overnight, but every small step toward authentic decision-making builds the foundation for unshakable inner strength. Chapter 3. The Partnership Principle. Life has a peculiar way of providing exactly the challenges you need for growth, precisely when you're ready for them. This observation has been made by philosophers, psychologists, and ordinary people throughout history. While it might sound mystical, it's actually quite practical. Understanding this principle can transform how you relate to difficulty and setback. Every obstacle contains within it the seeds of strength. Financial struggles teach resourcefulness, priority setting, and the difference between wants and needs. Relationship conflicts develop communication skills, emotional intelligence, and the capacity for forgiveness. Health challenges foster appreciation, resilience, and perspective on what truly matters. Professional setbacks build adaptability, humility, and creative problem-solving abilities. The partnership principle doesn't suggest that suffering is inherently good or that you should seek out difficulties. Rather, it recognizes that since challenges are inevitable, you might as well extract maximum value from them. It's the difference between being a victim of your circumstances and being a student of life. The growth mindset shift. When faced with any difficulty, ask yourself these questions. What strength is this situation requiring me to develop? What outdated belief or behavior pattern is this challenge revealing? How might this experience serve me in the future? What would I need to learn to handle similar situations more skillfully? Consider James, an architect who was laid off during an economic downturn. Initially devastated, he eventually recognized this setback as an opportunity to pursue his long-delayed dream of starting his own sustainable design firm. The financial pressure forced him to become more resourceful and focused. The uncertainty taught him to build multiple income streams. The humbling experience of job loss made him more empathetic to his future employees. 3 years later, his firm was thriving, and he credited the layoff as the catalyst that pushed him toward a more fulfilling career path. The resistance training model. Just as physical muscles grow stronger through resistance training, mental and emotional strength develop through working with life's challenges rather than simply wishing they would disappear. Each time you face a difficult situation and choose to respond with wisdom rather than just react with emotion, you're building psychological muscle. The key is learning to work with resistance rather than against it. Water doesn't fight with rocks in its path. It flows around them, gradually wearing them smooth. Similarly, the wise person learns to navigate obstacles with fluid strength rather than rigid resistance. Practical partnership strategies. The reframe exercise. When facing any challenge, write 3 different ways to interpret the situation. One interpretation might focus on what you're losing or how you're being victimized. The second might emphasize what you're learning or how you're growing. The third might consider how this experience could benefit others through your increased wisdom or empathy. The skills inventory. For each major challenge you face, identify specific skills or qualities you're being called to develop. Are you learning patience, courage, resourcefulness, forgiveness, or something else? Recognizing the growth opportunity makes the difficulty feel less random and more purposeful. The future self-consultation. Imagine yourself 5 years from now, having successfully navigated your current challenge. What advice would that future, wiser version of yourself give you about handling this situation? This exercise helps you tap into wisdom you didn't know you possessed. The partnership principle doesn't eliminate the pain of difficult experiences, but it transforms them from meaningless suffering into meaningful growth opportunities. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "How can I work with this experience to become stronger and wiser?" This shift in perspective is incredibly empowering because it puts you back in the driver's seat of your own development. Instead of being a victim of circumstances, you become a conscious participant in your own evolution. The challenges don't disappear, but your relationship with them changes completely. Chapter 4. The Foundation Review. Before building upward, it's essential to ensure your foundation is solid. The principles we've covered, learning from everyone, developing internal authority, and partnering with challenges, form the bedrock of unshakable inner strength. Let's examine how they work together and identify any areas that need strengthening. The integration assessment. Take an honest inventory of your current relationship with these foundational principles. Learning from everyone. Respect revolution. Do you find yourself frequently irritated by other people's behavior? When someone treats you poorly, Do you take it personally or see it as information about their internal state? Can you identify something you've learned from a recent difficult interaction? Do you view challenging people as obstacles or as unwitting teachers? Internal authority. How often do you make decisions primarily to please others rather than following your own judgment? Do you have a clear sense of your core values, and do you use them as decision-making criteria? Can you receive criticism without being devastated or praise without becoming dependent? Are you able to say no to requests that don't align with your priorities? Partnership with challenges. When faced with setbacks, do you primarily focus on what's wrong or what can be learned? Can you identify specific strengths you've developed through past difficulties? Do you view current challenges as opportunities for growth or just as problems to endure? Are you actively extracting lessons from your experiences or just hoping for them to end? Common foundation cracks. Most people struggle with one or more of these areas. Here are the most common weak points and how to address them. The approval addiction. If you find yourself constantly seeking external validation, start with micro decisions. Choose what to eat for lunch based on your preference, not what looks impressive to colleagues. Express a genuine opinion in a low-stakes conversation. Each small act of authenticity builds confidence for larger decisions. The victim mentality. If you consistently feel that life is happening to you rather than for you, practice the reframe exercise daily. For 1 week, end each day by identifying one challenge you faced and writing 3 different ways to interpret it. This trains your mind to automatically look for growth opportunities in difficulties. The judgment trap. If you find yourself frequently irritated by others, implement the learning question immediately when you notice judgment arising. Instead of thinking, "This person is so annoying," ask, "What is this interaction teaching me about patience, boundaries, or human nature?" The perfectionist paralysis. If you avoid challenges because you fear failure, remember that strength is built through struggling with resistance, not through avoiding it. Start with smaller challenges where failure is low cost but learning is high value. Building foundation strength. The daily practice. Implement this simple daily routine to strengthen your foundation. Morning foundation check, 5 minutes. Remind yourself that everyone you meet today is both teacher and student. You identify one decision you'll make today based on your values rather than others' expectations. Set an intention to look for the growth opportunity in any challenges that arise. Evening foundation review, 5 minutes. What did you learn from the most difficult person you encountered today? What choice did you make today that reflected your authentic self rather than external pressure? So, how did you grow stronger through any challenges you faced? This foundation work isn't glamorous, but it's essential. Just as a skyscraper requires a solid foundation to reach great heights safely, building unshakable inner strength requires mastering these fundamental principles. The time invested in strengthening your foundation will pay dividends throughout the rest of your development journey. Part 2. Mastering your mental space. Chapter 5. The morning mental reset. The first few minutes after waking up might be the most important moments of your entire day. During this brief window, your mind is transitioning from the unconscious state of sleep to the conscious state of wakefulness. How you guide this transition determines whether you'll spend the day as a conscious architect of your experience or as an unconscious reactor to external events. Most people immediately flood their minds with other people's priorities, problems, and perspectives. They check messages and start their day in reactive mode, responding to everyone else's agenda before clarifying their own. They read the news and fill their heads with anxiety about events they can't control. They begin their day already scattered, defensive, and disconnected from their own center. Here's a revolutionary alternative. Use the first few minutes of consciousness to prepare your mind for engaging wisely with whatever the day brings. This isn't about lengthy meditation sessions or complicated rituals. It's about simple mental preparation that creates a foundation of stability for everything that follows. The 3-minute morning protocol. Minute 1. Grounding. Before reaching for your phone or jumping out of bed, take 60 seconds to simply notice that you're alive and conscious. Feel your body against the mattress. Notice your breathing. Acknowledge that you've been given another day to live, learn, and contribute. This brief pause interrupts the automatic rush toward reactivity and creates space for intention. Minute 2. Preparing. Remind yourself of 3 fundamental truths that will help you navigate the day wisely. You will encounter people today who are struggling with their own problems and may not be at their best. This isn't about you. It's about them. Your happiness and peace of mind don't depend on how these interactions go. Your well-being comes from how you choose to respond, not from what happens to you. Your job is to meet whatever arises with as much wisdom, kindness, and strength as you can manage. Minute 3. Intention setting. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be today? This isn't about setting unrealistic goals or creating pressure for perfection. It's about clarifying your intention to approach the day consciously rather than just stumbling through it automatically. Advanced morning practices. As this basic protocol becomes natural, you can expand your morning preparation. The challenge anticipation. Spend a moment considering what difficulties you might face today and how you could respond to them wisely. This mental rehearsal prepares you to respond thoughtfully rather than react automatically when challenges arise. The gratitude foundation. Identify 3 things you're genuinely grateful for right now. This sets a tone of appreciation that colors how you perceive the day's events. When you start from gratitude, problems look like temporary inconveniences rather than disasters. The values check-in. Remind yourself of your core values and how you could honor them in today's activities. If integrity is important to you, how will you practice honesty in today's conversations? If kindness matters to you, how will you look for opportunities to help others? Common morning mental traps. Be aware of these patterns that can derail your morning preparation. The news anxiety spiral. Checking news or social media immediately upon waking floods your mind with problems you can't solve and emotions that aren't yours. This sets a tone of anxiety and helplessness for the entire day. Consider establishing a no news before breakfast policy. The email emergency delusion. Most messages that seem urgent at 6 a.m. are no more urgent at 8 a.m. Starting your day by responding to other people's agendas puts you in reactive mode and makes it much harder to maintain your center throughout the day. The yesterday's problems replay. Many people wake up and immediately begin replaying yesterday's mistakes or tomorrow's worries. This mental time travel steals energy from the only moment where you actually have any power. Right now. The comparison trap. Beginning the day by checking what others are doing on social media often triggers comparison and inequity. You're measuring your behind-the-scenes reality against others' highlight reels, which is neither accurate nor helpful. Creating morning boundaries. Protect your morning mental space by establishing clear boundaries. The device delay. Keep your phone in another room, or at least across the room, so you have to make a conscious choice to check it rather than reaching for it automatically. The input filter. Decide in advance what information you'll allow into your mind during the first hour of consciousness. Will you choose inputs that strengthen your mental state or ones that weaken it? The energy protection. Recognize that your mental energy is like a bank account. How you spend it in the morning affects what's available for the rest of the day. Invest it wisely in activities that strengthen rather than deplete you. Consider Rachel, a nurse who transformed her work experience by changing her morning routine. Previously, she would check work emails and news headlines immediately upon waking, often arriving at the hospital already feeling anxious and reactive. She began using the 3-minute morning protocol and noticed a significant difference in her ability to remain calm during stressful situations at work. Her colleagues began commenting on her increased patience and stability. The difference, she realized, was that I was starting each day from my center rather than from anxiety. The morning mental reset is like putting on psychological armor, not to shield yourself from life, but to ensure you need it from your strongest, wisest self rather than your most automatic, reactive patterns. This small investment of time and attention creates a foundation of stability that serves you throughout the entire day. Chapter 6. The 3-part self. Understanding yourself begins with recognizing that you operate as an integrated system with 3 distinct but interconnected components: your physical self, your emotional self, and your thinking self. Each requires different types of attention and care, and each influences the others in profound ways. Most people live unconsciously, allowing whichever component is loudest at the moment to drive their decisions. They eat when emotions demand comfort, make important choices when feelings are intense, or ignore physical needs when thoughts become obsessive. Learning to recognize and work skillfully with all three parts of yourself is essential for developing genuine inner strength. Your physical self, the vehicle. Your body is like a vehicle that carries you through life. It needs fuel, maintenance, rest, and occasional repairs. When you treat it well, it serves you reliably. When you neglect or abuse it, it breaks down and limits your capacity for everything else you want to accomplish. The key insight about your physical self is that it's designed to serve your higher purposes, not to be your master. Many people spend more time thinking about their appearance than developing their character, which is like polishing a car while ignoring engine problems. Others ignore their physical needs entirely, wondering why they feel tired, irritable, or unable to concentrate. Physical self-management strategies. The energy audit. Track your energy levels throughout the day for a week. When do you feel most alert and capable? When do you crash? What activities, foods, or situations drain your energy versus those that restore it? Use this data to structure your days more intelligently. The maintenance mindset. Think of physical care as maintenance rather than indulgence. Just as you wouldn't feel guilty about putting gas in your car or changing the oil, don't feel guilty about meeting your body's legitimate needs for rest, movement, and nutrition. The stress signal recognition. Learn to recognize your body's early warning signs of stress, fatigue, or imbalance. These might include tension in your shoulders, changes in sleep patterns, digestive issues, or frequent illness. Responding to early signals prevents larger problems. Your emotional self, the weather system. Emotions are like weather patterns, constantly changing, sometimes stormy, sometimes calm, always providing information about your inner climate. They're natural responses to circumstances, thoughts, and memories, and they serve important functions in helping you navigate relationships and make decisions. The crucial understanding about emotions is that they provide valuable information, but they don't have to control your actions. You can feel angry while choosing to speak calmly. You can feel afraid while deciding to act courageously. You can feel sad while continuing to engage productively with life. Emotional self-management strategies. The observer practice. When experiencing intense emotions, practice stepping back and observing them as if you were a scientist studying interesting phenomena. I notice I'm feeling anxious right now. My chest feels tight, my thoughts are racing, and I have an urge to avoid this situation. This creates space between you and the emotion, giving you more choice about how to respond. The information extraction. Ask yourself what your emotions are trying to tell you. Anger might be signaling that a boundary has been crossed. Anxiety might be indicating that you need to prepare more thoroughly. Sadness might be reflecting a loss that needs to be acknowledged. Extract the information without necessarily following the emotional impulse. The temporary reminder. Remember that all emotions are temporary. No feeling, no matter how intense, lasts forever. This perspective helps you avoid making permanent decisions based on temporary emotional states. When you're angry, you might want to quit your job. When you're sad, you might want to isolate yourself. When you're excited, you might want to make major life changes. Wait for the emotional intensity to settle before making important decisions. Your thinking self, the command center. Your thinking self is the executive center of your three-part system. This is where your real power lies, because your thought patterns determine the quality of your emotional experience and influence how well you care for your physical health. Most importantly, your thinking patterns determine how you interpret and respond to everything that happens to you. The key insight about your thinking self is that while you can't directly control your emotions or completely override your physical needs, you have tremendous influence over your thought patterns. By changing how you think about situations, you change how you feel about them and how effectively you respond to them. Thinking self-management strategies. The thought audit. For 1 week, pay attention to your most frequent thought patterns. Do you spend more time worrying about the future or replaying the past than engaging with the present? Do your thoughts tend toward criticism or appreciation? Do you frequently tell yourself discouraging stories or empowering ones? Awareness is the first step toward change. The reframe practice. When you notice yourself thinking thoughts that create anxiety, anger, or discouragement, practice finding alternative ways to interpret the same situation. This doesn't mean denying reality or forcing fake positivity. It means recognizing that most situations can be viewed from multiple perspectives, and some perspectives are more helpful than others. The question quality upgrade. The quality of your life is largely determined by the quality of questions you ask yourself. Instead of, "Why does this always happen to me?" try, "What can I learn from this experience?" Instead of, "What if everything goes wrong?" try, "How can I prepare well for this opportunity?" Better questions lead to better thoughts, which lead to better emotions and actions. Integration. Working with all three parts. The goal isn't to suppress any part of yourself, but to develop conscious coordination between all three components. Your physical self provides the energy and health necessary for pursuing your goals. Your emotional self provides motivation, connection, and valuable information about your values and needs. Your thinking self provides direction, interpretation, and decision-making capability. The integration check-in. Several times throughout the day, ask yourself, physical. How is my energy level? What does my body need right now? Emotional. What am I feeling? What information might these emotions be providing? Mental. What am I thinking about? Are these thoughts helpful or harmful? This brief check-in helps you respond to all parts of yourself appropriately, rather than being unconsciously driven by whichever component is loudest at the moment. Consider David, a software engineer who struggled with stress-related health problems, until he learned to work consciously with his three-part self. He realized he was ignoring physical fatigue signals, staying up too late coding, letting anxiety drive his thoughts, constantly worrying about deadlines, and not processing emotions from interpersonal conflicts at work. By implementing regular check-ins and addressing each component's needs, his health improved dramatically, his work quality increased, and his relationships became more satisfying. Understanding and working skillfully with your three-part self is like becoming the conductor of your own orchestra. Instead of having different instruments playing different songs at different volumes, you learn to coordinate all the parts into a harmonious whole that supports your highest goals and values. Chapter 7. The Present Moment. Advantage. Here's a truth that will revolutionize your experience of life. The present moment is the only place where you have any real power. Everything else, past regrets, future worries, other people's problems, exists only in your imagination. Yet most people spend their mental energy everywhere except the present. This isn't philosophical abstraction. It's practical psychology, with immediate benefits for your effectiveness, peace of mind, and overall life satisfaction. When you learn to anchor your attention in the present moment, you gain access to capabilities that are completely unavailable when your mind is scattered across time and space. The mental time travel problem. The human mind has a remarkable ability to travel through time via memory and imagination. This capacity for mental time travel is part of what makes us uniquely human. It allows us to learn from experience and plan for the future. But it becomes problematic when it becomes your primary mode of existence. Most people spend their days mentally replaying yesterday's mistakes or rehearsing tomorrow's possibilities while missing the actual life happening right now. They're physically present but mentally absent, like tourists who are so focused on taking photographs that they never actually see the places they're visiting. This mental time travel has several costs. Energy drain. Thinking about the past or future is exhausting because you're trying to solve problems that don't exist in the present moment. You can't fix yesterday's mistakes from today, and you can't solve tomorrow's problems until they actually arise. Effectiveness loss. When your attention is divided between past concerns and future worries, you have less mental capacity available for handling current situations skillfully. You make more mistakes, miss important information, and respond less appropriately to what's actually happening. Experience poverty. Life happens in the present moment. Relationships deepen through present moment attention. Creative insights arise in the now. Joy, beauty, and connection are only available when you're actually here to experience them.
The present moment advantage.
When you anchor your attention in the present, several powerful capacities become available. Enhanced perception. You notice details, opportunities, and resources that were always there but that your scattered attention missed. You become more aware of other people's emotions, environmental changes, and subtle information that can guide your decisions. Improved performance. Athletes call it being in the zone, the state where you're so present with your activity that self-consciousness disappears and optimal performance emerges naturally. This state is available in any activity when you're fully engaged with what you're doing right now. Emotional regulation. Most emotional disturbance comes from thinking about situations rather than dealing with them directly. When you're present with your actual current circumstances rather than your thoughts about them, you often discover that the reality is much more manageable than your mental projections. Creative problem solving. Solutions to problems often emerge when you stop trying to force them and instead become present with the situation as it actually is. This relaxed awareness allows creative insights to surface naturally.
Practical present moment training.
The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Grounding technique. When you notice your mind scattered across time, use this exercise to return to the present. 5 things you can see in your current environment.
4 things you can touch or feel.
3 things you can hear. 2 things you can smell. 1 thing you can taste. This simple practice immediately anchors your attention in present moment sensory experience. The single tasking experiment. For 1 week, practice doing only one thing at a time. When eating, just eat. When walking, just walk. When listening to someone, just listen. Notice how this affects the quality of each activity and your overall stress level. The presence bell. Set a random timer on your phone to ring every hour during your waking day. When it rings, pause and ask yourself, where is my attention right now? Am I present with what I'm doing, or am I mentally somewhere else? This builds awareness of your attention patterns. The breath anchor. Your breathing is always happening in the present moment, making it a reliable anchor for present moment awareness. Several times throughout the day, take 3 conscious breaths, paying attention to the sensation of air entering and leaving your body. This immediately brings you back to now.
Common present moment obstacles.
The planning trap. Some people resist present moment awareness because they think it means abandoning all planning or goal setting. Actually, the opposite is true. All effective planning and goal pursuit happens in the present moment. You can't plan yesterday or pursue goals tomorrow. You can only plan and act right now. The responsibility worry. Others resist presence because they think they need to mentally rehearse potential problems to be prepared for them. While some preparation is valuable, most worry is unproductive mental recycling that reduces your capacity to handle actual challenges when they arise. The urgency addiction. Many people have become addicted to the feeling of urgency and busyness. Being present can initially feel uncomfortable because it reveals how much mental chaos you've been carrying. This discomfort is temporary and gives way to profound relief as you develop the capacity for inner stillness. The boredom fear. Some resist present moment awareness because they're afraid of being bored. Actually, boredom usually indicates that you're not actually present with your experience, but are instead judging it as insufficient. True presence reveals richness and interest in even simple activities.
Advanced present moment practices.
Presence with difficulty. The real test of present moment awareness comes during challenging situations. Practice staying present with uncomfortable emotions, difficult conversations, or stressful circumstances, instead of escaping into mental time travel. This builds tremendous resilience and often reveals that situations are more manageable than your thoughts about them. Presence with people. Give the gift of your complete attention during conversations. Put away devices, stop planning what you'll say next, and simply listen to what the other person is actually communicating. This level of presence is so rare that it's profoundly meaningful to others. Presence with work. Find ways to bring present moment awareness to your professional activities. Whether you're writing emails, attending meetings, or solving problems, practice being fully engaged with the task at hand, rather than thinking about other projects or concerns.
Consider Jennifer, a busy mother of 3, who was constantly feeling overwhelmed by her endless to-do list and responsibilities. She felt like she was always behind, constantly thinking about the next task while trying to complete the current one. After learning present moment awareness techniques, she began practicing single tasking. When helping her daughter with homework, she focused completely on that interaction instead of mentally planning dinner or worrying about work deadlines. When folding laundry, she paid attention to the textures and movements instead of rehearsing difficult conversations she needed to have. The result was surprising. Not only did she feel calmer and more connected to her family, but she actually became more efficient because her full attention made each task go more smoothly. The paradox of present moment living. Here's something counterintuitive. The more present you become, the better you get at planning for the future and learning from the past. This happens because all effective planning and learning actually happens in the present moment. When you're not wasting mental energy on unproductive worry and regret, you have more clarity and creativity available for constructive reflection and preparation. Present moment awareness doesn't mean abandoning goals or becoming passive. It means recognizing that all progress toward your goals happens through present moment actions, and all learning from experience happens through present moment reflection. You become more effective in every area of life because you're fully engaged with whatever you're doing instead of being mentally scattered across time. The present moment advantage is like having a superpower that's been available to you all along, but that most people never learn to access. It's the difference between living your life and just thinking about living your life. It's the difference between being a participant in your own experience and being a distracted observer of it. Chapter 8. The Mortality Mirror. Thinking clearly about death might seem morbid, but it's actually one of the most life-enhancing practices you can develop. Not obsessing about dying or becoming fixated on morbid details, but honestly acknowledging that your time here is limited and precious. This awareness has the power to cut through all pretense and reveal what truly matters. When you remember that you and everyone you love will eventually die, ordinary moments become sacred. Petty grievances suddenly seem ridiculous. Postponed dreams become urgent. Authentic relationships become precious. Time becomes your most valuable currency, not to be wasted on activities that don't align with your deepest values. This isn't about becoming gloomy or fatalistic. Death consciousness is about using the reality of mortality to wake up to the vividness and urgency of being alive right now. It's about living with the intensity and appreciation that comes from knowing this experience is temporary and unrepeatable. The perspective revolution. Mortality awareness immediately clarifies priorities in a way that nothing else can. Consider these scenarios. If you knew you had exactly 1 year to live, would you spend it arguing about politics with strangers on the internet? Would you waste energy on grudges or resentments? Would you postpone telling people you love them? Would you continue doing work that feels meaningless? If you knew your parent had 6 months left to live, would you visit more often? Would you ask about their life experiences while you still could? Would you focus on their annoying habits or appreciate their unique qualities? If you knew your friend was moving away permanently next month, would you make time for more meaningful conversations? Would you express gratitude for their friendship? Would you create positive final memories together? These aren't hypothetical scenarios. They are the actual reality of human existence. The only variable is timing, which none of us can know for certain. The wise person lives with this awareness daily, rather than waiting for external reminders. Death as the great teacher. Mortality consciousness teaches several profound lessons. The futility of perfectionism. When you realize your time is limited, you stop waiting for perfect conditions before taking action. You publish the imperfect book, have the awkward conversation, take the uncertain risk. Done becomes more valuable than perfect. The irrelevance of others' opinions. When you understand that everyone's opinion of you will matter exactly 0 after you're gone, you become free to live authentically. You stop performing for approval and start expressing your genuine self. The urgency of love. Knowing that relationships are temporary makes you more willing to be vulnerable, more quick to forgive, and more generous with affection. You stop saving your love for special occasions and start expressing it regularly. The preciousness of ordinary moments. A conversation with an elderly parent becomes treasured time, rather than an obligation. A sunny afternoon becomes a gift rather than just weather. A shared meal becomes a celebration rather than just fuel. Practical mortality practices. The death reflection. Once per week, spend 5 minutes contemplating the reality that you will die. Not in a morbid way, but as a fact that informs how you want to live. Ask yourself, if I died 1 year from today, what would I regret not having done? What would I regret having wasted time on? The legacy question. Regularly ask yourself, how do I want to be remembered? What impact do I want to have had on the people in my life? This question helps align your daily actions with your deeper values. The gratitude for time. Instead of complaining about not having enough time, practice feeling grateful for the time you do have. Every day you're alive is a day that billions of people throughout history never got to experience. The relationship urgency. Treat every interaction with loved ones as potentially the last. This doesn't mean being dramatic or heavy, but rather being present, kind, and authentic. Express appreciation regularly, rather than assuming there will always be more opportunities. The completion practice. Regularly ask yourself, what conversations need to happen? What forgiveness needs to be offered? What dreams need to be pursued? Don't let important things remain indefinitely incomplete. Common mortality awareness resistance. The anxiety trap. Some people avoid thinking about death because it makes them anxious. This anxiety often diminishes with practice, as you realize that death awareness actually enhances life rather than diminishing it. Start with brief, gentle reflections rather than intense contemplation. The depression concern. Others worry that mortality awareness will make them sad. While there can be moments of sadness when confronting the temporary nature of life, most people find that death consciousness actually increases joy and appreciation for being alive. The parallelist fear. Some resist mortality awareness because they think it might lead to despair or inaction. Actually, the opposite typically occurs. People become more motivated to live meaningfully when they truly understand how precious and limited their time is. The denial habit. Many people have spent years avoiding thoughts of death and find it challenging to overcome this habit. Start small. Perhaps reading about someone who lived a meaningful life despite facing mortality, or spending time in nature contemplating the cycles of life and death. Advanced mortality practices. The deathbed perspective. When facing difficult decisions, imagine yourself on your deathbed, looking back at this choice. What would that older, wiser version of yourself advise you to do? This perspective often reveals the right path when you're confused by competing priorities. The memorial service visualization. Imagine what you would want said about you at your memorial service. What qualities would you want remembered? What contributions would you want celebrated? This exercise helps clarify the kind of person you want to be. The last day practice. Occasionally spend the day as if it were your last. Notice how this changes your priorities, your interactions, and your appreciation for simple experiences. This practice reveals how much richness is available in ordinary life when you pay attention. The ancestral wisdom. Reflect on people who have died who you admired. What made their lives meaningful? How did they handle challenges? What would they advise you about living well? This connects you to the wisdom of those who have completed their journey. Consider Michael, a successful businessman who was always focused on the next deal, the next promotion, the next financial goal. When his best friend died unexpectedly of a heart attack at age 45, Michael was forced to confront his own mortality. The experience transformed his priorities completely. He began spending more time with his children, expressing gratitude to his wife regularly, and choosing projects based on meaning rather than just profit. I realized I had been living as if I were immortal, he reflected. When I accepted that my time is limited, I started making sure it counted. The mortality paradox. Here's the paradox of mortality awareness. The more deeply you accept that you will die, the more fully you come alive. When you stop taking your existence for granted, you start experiencing it with intensity and appreciation that transforms even mundane activities into meaningful experiences. This isn't about becoming obsessed with death or living in constant awareness of mortality. It's about allowing the reality of death to inform your living, to guide your choices, and to deepen your appreciation for the extraordinary gift of conscious existence. The mortality mirror reflects back the essential question: Given that this life is temporary and unrepeatable, how do you want to spend it? Your answer to this question, translated into daily actions and choices, becomes the foundation for a life well lived. Part 3. Navigating Human Complexity. Chapter 9. The Observatory Approach. One of the most valuable skills you can develop is the ability to step back and observe human behavior, including your own, with the detached curiosity of a scientist studying fascinating phenomena. This observatory perspective transforms you from being unconsciously caught up in the drama of human interaction to becoming a conscious participant who can respond wisely rather than just react automatically. When you develop this capacity for observation, several powerful things happen. You stop taking other people's behavior personally because you understand it as information about their inner world rather than judgment about your worth. You become less reactive because you're not emotionally enmeshed in every interaction. You make better decisions because you can see patterns and dynamics that aren't visible when you're caught up in the emotional intensity of situations. The human comedy. Begin by observing the broader patterns of human behavior with gentle amusement rather than harsh judgment. Notice how people move through their days driven by unconscious patterns that they rarely examine. The approval seekers. Watch how some people exhaust themselves trying to please everyone, often ending up satisfying no one. Notice how they change their opinions, appearance, and even values based on their audience. Observe how this strategy actually reduces their attractiveness, because authenticity is more compelling than people-pleasing. The control strugglers. See how others attempt to manage every detail of their environment and other people's behavior, becoming increasingly frustrated as reality refuses to cooperate with their plans. Notice how their efforts to control external circumstances often reduce their actual influence because people resist being controlled. The victim narratives. Observe how some people consistently interpret events as happening to them rather than for them, collecting evidence of how unfair life is while missing opportunities for growth and agency. Notice how this perspective becomes self-fulfilling as it reduces their motivation to take constructive action. The status competitors. Watch how people compete for things that won't ultimately bring satisfaction, money than they need, recognition from people they don't respect, possessions that provide temporary pleasure but no lasting fulfillment. Notice how the pursuit of status often comes at the expense of genuine connection and meaning. This observation isn't about feeling superior to others or becoming cynical about human nature. It's about recognizing these patterns so you can make conscious choices about whether to participate in them. When you can see the human comedy clearly, you become free to write your own script rather than unconsciously following society's default programming. The self-observatory. Apply this same observational skill to yourself. This might be even more valuable than observing others because self-awareness is the foundation of all personal growth and wisdom. Pattern recognition. Notice your own unconscious patterns without judgment. Do you tend to seek approval, avoid conflict, procrastinate on important tasks, or make decisions based on fear rather than wisdom? Simply observing these patterns without trying to immediately change them creates the space necessary for conscious choice. Trigger identification. Pay attention to what situations, people, or circumstances tend to knock you off balance. Is it criticism from authority figures, feeling excluded from social groups, financial uncertainty, relationship conflict? Knowing your triggers allows you to prepare for them and respond more skillfully. Emotional weather tracking. Observe your emotional patterns like a meteorologist tracking weather systems. Notice what tends to create storms in your inner world and what tends to create calm. This awareness helps you make environmental choices that support your well-being. Default response analysis. Notice your automatic responses to common situations. How do you typically handle criticism, praise, conflict, unexpected changes, or disappointment? Are these responses serving you well, or are they outdated patterns that need updating? Practical observatory techniques. The daily observation log. Each evening, spend 5 minutes noting interesting human behavior you observed during the day. This might include your own reactions, other people's patterns, or social dynamics you witnessed. The goal is developing your observational skills, not judging or criticizing. The emotional distance practice. When you find yourself getting caught up in drama or conflict, Practice stepping back mentally and observing the situation as if you were watching a movie. What are the underlying dynamics? What does each person really want? What patterns are playing out? This distance often reveals solutions that aren't visible when you're emotionally enmeshed.
The pattern prediction exercise. Once you start recognizing patterns in yourself and others, practice predicting how certain situations will unfold.
If your colleague always gets defensive when receiving feedback, what will happen when you offer suggestions? If you tend to procrastinate on difficult conversations, what will you likely do about that challenging discussion you need to have? This develops your understanding of human nature. The anthropologist mindset. Approach social situations like an anthropologist studying a fascinating culture. What are the unspoken rules? What behaviors are rewarded or punished? What values are actually demonstrated through actions rather than words? This perspective helps you navigate social complexities more skillfully. Advanced observatory skills. The motivation detective. Practice identifying the underlying motivations behind people's behavior. The colleague who interrupts meetings might be seeking recognition. The friend who gives unsolicited advice might be trying to feel valuable. The family member who criticizes your choices might be expressing their own fears or regrets. Understanding motivations helps you respond to root causes rather than just surface behaviors. The projection spotter. Learn to recognize when people are projecting their own issues onto you. The person who accuses you of being angry might be struggling with their own anger. The friend who warns you about being too trusting might be dealing with their own trust issues. Recognizing projection prevents you from absorbing others' emotional baggage. The system observer. Notice how group dynamics influence individual behavior. How do families, work teams, or social groups unconsciously assign roles to different members? How do these systems resist change, even when the change would benefit everyone? Understanding systems helps you navigate group situations more effectively. The cultural pattern analyst. OBERF. How cultural programming influences behavior. How do gender expectations, generational differences, socioeconomic backgrounds, or regional cultures shape people's choices and reactions? This awareness helps you understand behavior that might otherwise seem irrational. The observatory benefits. Developing this observational capacity creates what I call emotional spaciousness, the ability to remain centered and responsive rather than reactive, even in challenging situations. Instead of being trapped inside every feeling and reaction, you can step back and observe your own mental processes with curiosity rather than judgment. This distance gives you the freedom to choose your responses rather than just reacting automatically. You can love more freely because you're not constantly afraid of being hurt. You can take risks because you're not devastated by failure. You can be yourself because you're not performing for approval. Consider Sarah, a manager who was constantly stressed by her team's interpersonal conflicts. After developing her observatory skills, she began noticing the patterns underlying these conflicts. She realized that most of the drama stemmed from unclear expectations and competition for her attention. Instead of getting pulled into each conflict emotionally, she started addressing the systemic issues creating the problems. The team dynamics improved significantly, and her stress levels decreased dramatically. I went from being a participant in the drama to being a conscious influence for positive change, she reflected. The observatory approach doesn't make you cold or disconnected. It makes you more skillful in your connections. When you understand human nature clearly, you can work with it more effectively. You become more compassionate because you understand that everyone is dealing with their own internal struggles. You become more influential because you can address underlying needs rather than just surface behaviors. This perspective is like developing psychological X-ray vision. You can see through surface behaviors to understand the deeper patterns and motivations that drive human interaction. This understanding becomes the foundation for responding with wisdom rather than just reacting with emotion. Chapter 10. The Difficult People Decoder. Here's a perspective that will revolutionize how you handle challenging relationships. Difficult people are usually operating from their own understanding of what will make them safe, valued, or happy. Their behavior, while frustrating to you, makes perfect sense within their internal world. The aggressive colleague believes that dominance equals security. The gossiping friend thinks that sharing secrets creates intimacy and importance. The controlling family member assumes that managing details prevents catastrophe. The chronically critical person has learned to find flaws before others can find flaws in them. The people pleaser hopes that meeting everyone's needs will guarantee acceptance and love. Understanding this doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior or allowing yourself to be mistreated. It means recognizing that their actions aren't really about you. They're about their internal struggles, learned patterns, and attempts to meet their own needs. This insight frees you from taking their behavior personally, which is the first step toward responding wisely rather than reactively. The needs underneath the behavior. Every difficult behavior is usually an attempt to meet a legitimate human need, but using an ineffective or harmful strategy. Learning to identify the need underneath the problematic behavior allows you to respond to root causes rather than just symptoms. The aggressive person, underneath the hostility, is often a need for respect, control, or protection from perceived threats. They may have learned that being intimidating keeps them safe from being vulnerable or taken advantage of. The passive-aggressive person, behind the indirect hostility, is usually a need for autonomy combined with fear of direct conflict. They want to express their displeasure, but lack the skills or courage for honest communication. The chronic complainer, beneath the constant negativity, is often a need for attention, validation, or a sense of control. Complaining might be their way of feeling heard or important, or their attempt to avoid taking action on problems that feel overwhelming. The perfectionist controller, under the need to manage everything, is usually fear of chaos, failure, or being judged. They may believe that if they can control all variables, they can prevent bad outcomes or criticism. The attention seeker, behind the dramatic behavior, is often a deep need for connection and significance. They may have learned that being the center of attention is the only way to feel valued or loved. The withdrawal specialist, underneath the avoidance, is usually fear of rejection, conflict, or inadequacy. They may protect themselves by not engaging, rather than risking disapproval or failure. Decoding strategies. The curiosity approach. Instead of immediately judging difficult behavior, practice getting curious about what need the person might be trying to meet. Ask yourself, what is this person really seeking through this behavior? This shift from judgment to curiosity immediately changes your emotional state and opens possibilities for more skillful responses. The compassionate interpretation. Try to find the most generous possible explanation for someone's difficult behavior. This doesn't mean being naive or making excuses for genuinely harmful actions, but rather looking for the human struggle underneath the problematic behavior. Often, difficult people are in pain and expressing it in the only ways they know how. The pattern recognition. Notice when and where someone tends to be most difficult. Are they worse when stressed, tired, feeling unappreciated, or dealing with uncertainty? Understanding their triggers helps you respond more appropriately and sometimes avoid unnecessary conflicts. The strength identification. Look for the positive qualities that might be underneath their difficult traits. The perfectionist might have valuable attention to detail. The aggressive person might have useful determination. The complainer might have good analytical skills. Recognizing strengths helps you work more effectively with difficult people. Response strategies for common difficult types. With the angry, aggressive person. Remain calm and don't match their energy level. Acknowledge their concern without accepting abusive behavior. Set clear boundaries about how you're willing to be treated. Look for opportunities to give them respect and control in appropriate ways. With the passive-aggressive person, address issues directly rather than dancing around them. Don't try to force them to be direct if they're not ready. Focus on specific behaviors and their impact rather than their intentions. Create clear expectations and consequences. With the chronic complainer, listen briefly to show you've heard them, then redirect to solutions. Avoid trying to convince them that things aren't so bad. Set limits on how much complaining you'll engage with. Look for opportunities to acknowledge their legitimate concerns. With the control enthusiast, give them areas where their controlling tendencies can be useful. Be clear about boundaries where their control isn't appropriate. Help them distinguish between influence and control. Recognize their fear underneath the need to control. With the attention seeker,
Give them positive attention when they're behaving appropriately. Don't reward dramatic behavior with excessive attention.
Help them find constructive ways to feel significant.
Set boundaries around how much drama you'll engage with. With the avoider, respect their need for space while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Make it safe for them to engage by being non-threatening. Don't force interaction, but keep the door open. Address avoidance directly when it affects shared responsibilities, advanced difficult people skills. The strategic non-engagement. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply not engaging with someone's difficult behavior. You don't have to prove your point to someone who isn't capable of hearing it. You don't have to defend yourself against unreasonable attacks. You don't have to fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. Strategic non-engagement preserves your energy for more productive interactions. The boundary setting. Learn to set clear, firm boundaries without being hostile or defensive. This might sound like, "I'm willing to discuss this when we can both remain calm." Or, "I understand you're frustrated, but I'm not willing to be spoken to that way." Or, "I care about you, but I can't solve this problem for you." The emotional regulation. The most important skill in dealing with difficult people is managing your own emotional state. When you remain centered, you can respond wisely rather than react automatically. When you get pulled into their emotional chaos, you lose your ability to be helpful and usually make the situation worse. The influence versus control distinction. Remember that you can influence how people treat you, but you can't control their personality, attitudes, or choices. Focus your energy on what you can actually affect: your responses, your boundaries, your choice of how much to engage, rather than trying to change them. Real-world applications. Consider Maria, who struggled with her micromanaging boss for years. She constantly felt frustrated and criticized, taking his controlling behavior as evidence that he didn't trust or value her work. After learning to decode difficult behavior, she realized that his micromanagement stemmed from anxiety about his own performance and fear of failure. Instead of getting defensive, she began proactively communicating her progress on projects and asking for his input on key decisions. This gave him the sense of control he needed, while giving her more autonomy. Their working relationship improved dramatically once she understood and addressed his underlying needs. The difficult people paradox. Here's something counterintuitive. The better you become at understanding and working with difficult people, the less difficult they seem. This happens for several reasons. You stop taking their behavior personally, which reduces your emotional reactivity. You learn to address underlying needs rather than just responding to surface behaviors. You develop better boundaries, which trains people to treat you more respectfully. You become more skilled at influencing positive behavior and less likely to accidentally trigger negative responses. The goal isn't to become a therapist for difficult people or to fix everyone's problems. It's to develop the skills necessary to maintain your own peace and effectiveness while working with the full spectrum of human personalities and coping strategies. Understanding difficult people is like learning a foreign language. Once you understand what they're really trying to communicate, you can respond more appropriately and often help create better outcomes for everyone involved. You don't have to like their communication style, but understanding it gives you much more power to influence positive interactions. Chapter 11. The control distinction. Most human suffering stems from a fundamental confusion, trying to control things that are actually beyond our influence, while neglecting the areas where we do have genuine power. Learning to distinguish clearly between what you can and cannot control is perhaps the most liberating insight you can develop. This isn't just philosophical theory. It's practical psychology that immediately improves your effectiveness, reduces your stress, and increases your overall life satisfaction. When you focus your energy where it can actually make a difference and release your grip on everything else, you become both more powerful and more peaceful. What you can actually control. Your sphere of genuine control is smaller than most people think, but more powerful than most people realize. Your effort. You can control how much energy and attention you bring to any situation. You can't guarantee success, but you can guarantee that you gave your best effort. This distinction transforms failure from a source of shame into valuable feedback. Your responses. While you can't control what happens to you,
You have complete authority over how you respond. You can choose patience over irritation, curiosity over judgment, courage over fear. This choice is available in every moment and is the foundation of all personal power. Your character development. You can decide what kind of person you want to become and take daily actions aligned with that vision. You can choose to develop virtues like integrity, compassion, resilience, and wisdom, regardless of your circumstances. Your attention. Where you place your mental focus is entirely under your control. You can choose to dwell on problems or solutions, focus on gratitude or grievances, pay attention to opportunities or obstacles. This choice shapes the quality of your entire experience. Your preparation. You can control how well you prepare for challenges, opportunities, and important conversations. You can't guarantee outcomes, but you can ensure you're as ready as possible for whatever arises. Your learning. You can control whether you extract wisdom from your experiences or just endure them. Every situation, successful or not, contains lessons that can improve your future decision-making and responses. Your choices. In any situation, you can control the choices you make based on your values, rather than your emotions or others' expectations. This includes choices about where to work, how to spend your time, what relationships to maintain, and what goals to pursue. What you cannot control. The list of things beyond your control is vast and includes most of what people spend their mental energy worrying about. Other people's decisions. You cannot control what others choose to do, say, think, or feel. You can influence them through your example, words, and actions, but their responses are ultimately their choice. Natural events. Good weather, earthquakes, illness, aging, and death are all beyond human control. You can prepare for them and respond skillfully, but you cannot prevent them. The past, what has already happened, is completely fixed and unchangeable. You can learn from it, make amends for your mistakes, and change how you tell the story, but you cannot alter the facts. Ultimate outcomes. You can control your effort, preparation, and choices, but you cannot guarantee specific results. Success depends on many variables beyond your influence, including timing, other people's decisions, and circumstances you can't foresee. Other people's opinions. What others think about you is shaped by their own experiences, biases, insecurities, and limited information about your situation. You can behave with integrity and kindness, but you cannot control their perceptions or judgments. Economic and political conditions. While you can make wise financial and civic choices, you cannot control market fluctuations, political developments, or societal changes that affect your life. Your initial emotional reactions. While you can choose how to respond to emotions, you cannot directly control which emotions arise in response to events. Feelings happen automatically based on your psychology and past experiences. The energy audit. Most people waste enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy trying to control things that are actually beyond their influence. This is like trying to change the weather by shouting at clouds, exhausting and ineffective. Step 1. Track your worry investment. For 1 week, notice what you spend time thinking about, worrying about, or trying to influence. Keep a simple log of these concerns. Step 2. Categorize your concerns. Sort your list into 2 categories: can control and cannot control. Be honest about this distinction. If you can only influence something but not control it, put it in the cannot control category. Step 3. Redirect your energy for items in the can control category. Practice letting go of the mental energy you've been investing in them. For items in the can control category, make specific plans for taking action. Step 4. Develop control alternatives. For situations you cannot control, identify related areas where you do have control. For example, you can't control whether you get laid off, but you can control how much you save, how you develop your skills, and how you build your professional network. Practical control strategies. The influence versus control distinction. Learn to distinguish between influence and control. You can influence your children's values through your example and teaching, but you cannot control their choices. You can influence your work environment through your attitude and contributions, but you cannot control your colleagues' behavior or company policies. The preparation focus. Instead of worrying about things you can't control, focus on preparing for multiple scenarios. You can't control whether the economy will crash, but you can control building an emergency fund and developing multiple income streams.
The response planning. For situations beyond your control, develop response plans. You can't control whether you'll face criticism, but you can decide in advance how you'll handle it constructively. You can't control whether opportunities will arise, but you can prepare to recognize and seize them when they do. The acceptance practice. Learn to practice genuine acceptance of things beyond your control. This doesn't mean passive resignation or approval. It means acknowledging reality so you can work with it rather than against it.
Common control illusions.
The worry superstition. Many people unconsciously believe that worrying about problems helps prevent them or shows care for others. Actually, worry typically reduces your capacity to handle problems effectively and doesn't demonstrate love. Taking constructive action does. The perfection fantasy. Some people exhaust themselves trying to control every detail of their environment, believing this will guarantee good outcomes. Perfect control is impossible, and the attempt often creates more problems than it solves. The people-pleasing delusion. Others try to control how they're perceived by managing their behavior to please everyone. This strategy fails because different people want different things, and authenticity is more attractive than people-pleasing. The outcome attachment. Many people make their happiness dependent on specific outcomes, getting the promotion, having others approve of their decisions, or avoiding all difficulties. This attachment to uncontrollable outcomes creates unnecessary suffering. Advanced control practices. The daily control check-in. Each morning, remind yourself of what you can control today. Effort, attitude, choices, and responses. Each evening, review how well you focused your energy on your sphere of control rather than waste it on things beyond your influence. The serenity practice. Regularly use some version of the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept what I cannot change, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This practice builds the mental habit of making the control distinction. The energy investment review. Periodically audit where you're investing your mental and emotional energy. Are you spending more time on things you can control or things you cannot? Adjust your focus as needed to maximize your effectiveness and peace of mind. The control boundary setting. Learn to say things like, "That's not something I can control," or "I can't fix that for you, but here's what I can do." Or, "I'm going to focus my energy on the parts of this situation where I can make a difference." Consider James, an entrepreneur who was constantly stressed about market conditions, competitor actions, and economic uncertainty, all things beyond his control. After learning the control distinction, he redirected his energy toward what he could influence, improving his products, building customer relationships, developing his team's skills, and maintaining financial reserves. His stress levels decreased significantly, and his business actually performed better because he was focusing on factors that truly affected his success. The control paradox. Here's something counterintuitive. The more you accept what you cannot control, the more power you have to influence what you can. When you stop wasting energy on uncontrollable factors, you have more resources available for areas where you can make a real difference. When you stop trying to control everything, you become more effective at controlling what matters most. The control distinction is like having a superpower that most people never develop. While others exhaust themselves fighting reality, you work skillfully with it. While others suffer from their attachment to uncontrollable outcomes, you find peace in focusing on controllable processes. While others feel powerless because they're focused on what they cannot influence, you feel empowered because you're clear about where your real power lies. This clarity becomes the foundation for both effectiveness and serenity. The ability to make a significant positive impact while maintaining inner peace regardless of external circumstances. Part 4. Working with Change and Impermanence. Chapter 12. The Flow Principle. Everything around you is in constant motion. The seemingly solid chair you're sitting in is composed of atoms vibrating at incredible speeds. The building you're in is slowly settling and aging. Your body is continuously replacing millions of cells.
Your thoughts and emotions are flowing like a river that never contains the same water twice. Yet humans spend enormous energy trying to make permanent what is inherently temporary. We cling to relationships as if they'll never change, accumulate possessions as if they'll last forever, and resist circumstances as if they're fixed in stone. This resistance to natural change creates unnecessary suffering and reduces our effectiveness in navigating life's inevitable transitions.
Learning to work with change rather than against it is one of the most liberating skills you can develop.
Instead of being constantly surprised and frustrated by the fact that things change, you can learn to anticipate, adapt, and even harness the energy of change for your benefit. The nature of impermanence. Understanding impermanence begins with recognizing that change operates at multiple levels simultaneously. Physical impermanence. Your body is completely different than it was 7 years ago. Every cell has been replaced. The food you ate this morning is being transformed into energy and waste. The seasons cycle through their eternal dance of birth, growth, decay, and renewal. Emotional impermanence. No feeling, no matter how intense, lasts forever. Joy gives way to contentment. Anger dissolves into acceptance. Sadness transforms into wisdom. Emotions are like weather patterns, temporary atmospheric conditions in your inner world. Circumstantial impermanence. Situations that seem permanent. Your job, your living situation, your relationships are all temporary arrangements that will eventually change. Some changes happen gradually, others suddenly. But change itself is the only constant. Mental impermanence. Your thoughts, beliefs, and perspectives are continuously evolving. The way you see the world today is different from how you saw it 5 years ago, and will be different from how you see it 5 years from now. The resistance problem. Most suffering comes not from change itself, but from resistance to change. When you fight against the natural flow of life, you create internal friction that exhausts your energy and reduces your effectiveness. The clinging pattern. People often cling to pleasant experiences, trying to make them last forever. They repeat successful strategies long after circumstances have changed, maintain relationships that have run their course, and resist aging or other natural transitions. The pushing pattern. Others push against unpleasant experiences, trying to make them end immediately. They resist necessary challenges, avoid difficult emotions, and refuse to accept temporary setbacks as part of their development journey. This resistance is like swimming against a powerful current. It exhausts you while making little progress. The attachment trap. The deepest form of resistance comes from attachment to specific outcomes. When you become fixated on how things should unfold, you lose the flexibility necessary to work with how things actually unfold. This attachment creates a gap between reality and expectation that fills with frustration, disappointment, and anxiety. Working with natural flow. The wise person learns to work with the natural rhythms of change rather than fighting them. This doesn't mean becoming passive or fatalistic. It means becoming strategically adaptive. The seasonal approach. Just as farmers work with seasonal cycles rather than planting crops in winter, you can learn to recognize the seasons in your life and respond appropriately. Sometimes it's planting season, time for new projects and relationships. Sometimes it's growing season, time for nurturing and developing. Sometimes it's harvest season, time for enjoying results. And sometimes it's fallow season, time for rest and reflection. The water wisdom. Water provides the perfect model for working with obstacles. It doesn't fight with rocks. It flows around them, gradually wearing them smooth. When blocked, water doesn't give up. It finds another path or builds pressure until it can continue flowing. This fluid persistence is more effective than rigid force. The adaptation practice. Instead of asking, "Why is this changing?" ask, "How can I adapt skillfully to this change?" This shift from resistance to adaptation immediately opens creative possibilities that weren't visible when you were focused on preventing change. The impermanence advantage. Once you accept that everything changes, you gain several significant advantages. Reduced anxiety. When you remember that all situations are temporary, you stop catastrophizing about current difficulties. "This too shall pass" becomes more than a platitude. It becomes practical wisdom that maintains your equilibrium during storms. Increased resilience. Understanding impermanence helps you bounce back from setbacks more quickly. You know that current pain is temporary, current failure is not permanent, and current limitations can be overcome with time and effort. Enhanced appreciation. When you truly grasp that good times are temporary, you savor them more fully. Knowing that pleasant experiences won't last forever makes you more present and grateful when they occur. Strategic patience. Impermanence teaches you that waiting can be a powerful strategy. Sometimes the best action is to wait for circumstances to change naturally, rather than forcing immediate action. Chapter 13. The Inner Weather System. Your emotional life operates like a weather system, constantly changing patterns of internal climate that affect your perception, decisions, and interactions. Just as meteorologists study atmospheric conditions to predict weather patterns, you can learn to observe and work skillfully with your inner weather. Most people are unconscious passengers in their emotional weather, blown about by every internal storm and surprised by each change in their inner climate. They make important decisions during emotional tornadoes, avoid necessary actions during periods of inner fog, and wonder why their lives feel chaotic and unpredictable. Understanding emotional weather patterns. Your emotional weather follows certain patterns, just like atmospheric weather. High-pressure systems. Times when you feel optimistic, energetic, and confident. During these periods, challenges seem manageable, people appear more attractive, and possibilities feel abundant. These are excellent times for making important decisions, starting new projects, and engaging in difficult conversations. Low-pressure systems. Periods when you feel pessimistic, tired, or uncertain. Everything seems harder, people appear more irritating, and problems feel overwhelming. During these times, avoid making major decisions and focus on maintenance activities rather than new initiatives. Storm systems. Intense emotional states like anger, grief, or fear that temporarily dominate your inner landscape. These storms are natural and necessary. They clear accumulated emotional pressure and often bring important insights. The key is weathering them skillfully rather than being destroyed by them. Seasonal patterns. Longer cycles in your emotional life that might correspond to life phases, annual rhythms, or major life changes. Understanding these longer patterns helps you prepare for predictable challenges and opportunities. The Observer's Tower. Imagine building an observer's tower in your mind, a place of stillness from which you can watch your emotional weather without being swept away by it. From this vantage point, you can see storms approaching, notice when clear skies are returning, and make conscious choices about how to respond to different weather conditions. The naming practice. When experiencing intense emotions, practice naming them specifically rather than being overwhelmed by them. Instead of, "I feel terrible," notice, "I'm experiencing sadness about the relationship ending, anxiety about financial security, and anger about feeling powerless." This precision creates distance between you and the emotion. The temporary reminder. During difficult emotional weather, remind yourself that this state is temporary. No storm lasts forever, no matter how intense. This perspective prevents you from making permanent changes based on temporary emotional states. The pattern recognition. Notice your personal emotional weather patterns. Are you typically more optimistic in mornings or evenings? Do certain activities, people, or environments tend to create specific emotional climates? Understanding your patterns helps you make environmental choices that support emotional stability. Working with different weather conditions. During clear skies, when your emotional weather is calm and clear, use this time for making important decisions that require good judgment, having difficult conversations that need clarity and patience, planning future projects and setting meaningful goals, building relationships and strengthening connections. During storms, when experiencing intense emotions, focus on maintaining basic self-care without making major changes, expressing emotions appropriately rather than suppressing them, seeking support from trusted friends or advisors, waiting for the intensity to pass before taking significant action. During fog, when feeling confused or uncertain, concentrate on gathering more information before making decisions. Maintaining routines that provide stability and grounding. Asking for guidance from people with clearer perspective. Taking small, reversible steps rather than major leaps. During high winds, when feeling agitated or restless, channel energy into physical activities that discharge excess energy constructively. Creative projects that use nervous energy productively. Cleaning and organizing to create external order. Problem-solving activities that benefit from high energy. The emotional thermostat. Just as buildings have thermostats to regulate temperature, you can develop an emotional thermostat to maintain psychological climate control. Environmental design. Create physical and social environments that support emotional stability. This might mean organizing your living space to feel peaceful, choosing relationships that provide support rather than drama, or establishing routines that maintain your emotional equilibrium. Early warning systems. Develop sensitivity to early signs of changing emotional weather. You might notice physical tension, changes in sleep patterns, increased irritability, or shifts in motivation before full emotional storms develop. Early detection allows for preventive action. Regulation strategies. Build a toolkit of practices that help regulate emotional climate. Physical activities that discharge stress and restore balance. Mental practices like meditation or journaling that create clarity. Social activities that provide connection and perspective. Creative activities that express emotions constructively. Chapter 14. The Acceptance Gateway. The most counterintuitive path to personal power runs directly through complete acceptance of what is. This doesn't mean passive resignation or approval of everything that happens. It means acknowledging reality fully, so you can work with it effectively, rather than waste energy fighting facts. Most people exhaust themselves battling reality, like someone trying to argue with gravity or negotiate with the sunrise. They spend precious mental energy wishing things were different, instead of addressing things as they actually are. This resistance to what is creates a constant background tension that reduces their effectiveness and happiness. The nature of radical acceptance. True acceptance requires distinguishing between what is factually true and what you wish were true. It means acknowledging that your past cannot be changed, regardless of how much you regret certain decisions or wish events had unfolded differently. The only power you have regarding the past is to learn from it and make different choices going forward. Other people are exactly as they are right now, not as you wish they were or think they should be. Your relationship with them must be based on their actual qualities and limitations, not your fantasies about their potential. Your current circumstances exist, regardless of whether you think they're fair, convenient, or pleasant. Arguing with reality is a debate you can never win, because reality doesn't participate in negotiations. Your emotions and physical sensations are present whether you approve of them or not. Fighting with your feelings typically intensifies them rather than eliminating them. The resistance cost. When you resist what is, you pay several hidden costs. Energy drain. Fighting reality requires enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy that could be used for constructive action. It's like trying to drive with the parking brake engaged. You can move forward, but it's inefficient and damaging. Clarity loss. Resistance clouds your perception and prevents you from seeing situations accurately. When you're busy being upset about how things are, you can't clearly assess what to do about them. Opportunist blindness. Focusing on what you wish were different prevents you from noticing what is actually possible given current circumstances. Hidden opportunities remain invisible when you're fixated on how reality should be rearranged. Relationship damage. Trying to change other people or circumstances usually creates conflict and resentment. People can sense when you're not accepting them as they are, which damages trust and connection. The acceptance process. Acceptance is not a one-time decision, but an ongoing practice that becomes stronger with repetition. Step 1. Recognition. Notice when you're arguing with reality. This might sound like internal complaints. This shouldn't be happening. Well, they shouldn't act that way. Or, I shouldn't feel like this. Step 2. Acknowledgements. Clearly state the facts without interpretation or judgment.
My colleague criticized my work. I feel anxious about the presentation. Traffic is heavy. Or, my relationship ended.
Step 3. Release. Let go of insistence that reality be different. This doesn't mean liking the situation or giving up on improving it. It means stopping the internal argument with what has already occurred. Step 4. Response. From this place of acceptance, ask,
Given that this is the reality I'm working with, what is the wisest response? This question opens creative possibilities that weren't visible while you were resisting.
acceptance in practice.
With difficult people, instead of spending energy being frustrated that someone is manipulative, pessimistic, or unreliable, accept this as information about them and adjust your interactions accordingly. You can work with their actual personality rather than exhausting yourself trying to change them.
With setbacks, when plans don't work out, accept the new reality quickly rather than dwelling on what was supposed to happen. This allows you to pivot effectively and find alternative paths toward your goals. With physical limitations, whether dealing with illness, aging, or other physical constraints, acceptance allows you to work creatively within your actual capabilities, rather than being frustrated by limitations you cannot change.
With emotional states, when experiencing difficult emotions, accept them as temporary visitors, rather than problems to be solved immediately. This paradoxically often helps them pass more quickly than fighting or suppressing them.
The acceptance paradox.
Here's what seems contradictory but proves true in practice. The more completely you accept what is, the more power you have to influence what becomes. When you stop wasting energy on resistance, you have more resources available for constructive action. When you see situations clearly, rather than through the fog of wishful thinking, you can respond more effectively.
Acceptance is not defeat, it's the beginning of skillful action. You cannot solve problems you refuse to acknowledge, improve relationships you cannot see clearly, or change circumstances you're too busy resisting to understand. The gateway of acceptance leads to a place of remarkable freedom, where you can love people as they actually are, work with circumstances as they actually exist, and feel emotions as they actually arise, without needing to rearrange reality before you can be at peace.
Chapter 15. The Character Forge. Life provides a continuous workshop for developing character, but most people miss the opportunities because they're focused on comfort rather than growth. Every difficult situation, challenging relationship, and unexpected setback contains the raw materials for strengthening your character. If you approach them as a blacksmith approaches raw metal. The ancient philosophers understood that character is not inherited or granted. It's forged through conscious choices made repeatedly over time, especially during challenging circumstances. Your true character is revealed not during easy times when anyone can maintain their composure, but during difficulties when pressure reveals what you're really made of. The virtues as tools. Character development centers on 4 cardinal virtues that serve as both goals and tools for navigating life. Practical wisdom, the ability to see situations clearly and choose appropriate responses. This includes knowing when to speak and when to remain silent, when to act and when to wait, when to be firm and when to be flexible. Wisdom grows through experience, reflection, and learning from both successes and mistakes. Justice, treating others fairly and fulfilling your responsibilities faithfully. This extends beyond legal obligations to include honesty in dealings, loyalty to commitments, and consideration for how your actions affect others. Justice requires courage, because doing the right thing is often inconvenient or unpopular. Courage, the willingness to do what is right despite fear, difficulty, or opposition. Physical courage is only one form. Moral courage, to speak truth. Emotional courage, to be vulnerable. And intellectual courage, to change your mind when evidence contradicts your beliefs, are equally important. Self-discipline, the capacity to choose your responses rather than being driven by impulses, emotions, or external pressures. This includes managing your appetites, controlling your reactions, and maintaining focus on what truly matters rather than being distracted by immediate pleasures or pressures. The daily character practice. Character is built through small choices made consistently, rather than dramatic gestures made occasionally. Morning intention. Begin each day by identifying opportunities to practice specific virtues. How might you exercise wisdom in a challenging conversation? Where could you demonstrate justice in your dealings? What situations might require courage or self-discipline? Moment by dash. Moment choices. Throughout the day, notice small opportunities to strengthen character. Choose honesty when a small lie would be easier. Show patience when you feel irritated. Act courageously when you feel afraid. These micro-choices accumulate into significant character development over time. Evening reflection. End each day by reviewing your character choices. Where did you act in accordance with your values? Where did you fall short? What can you learn from both successes and failures? This reflection, without harsh self-judgment, helps refine your character practice. Character testing grounds. Life provides specific situations that serve as character development opportunities. Dealing with injustice. When treated unfairly, you can choose to respond with wisdom rather than revenge, justice rather than bitterness. These situations test whether your commitment to virtue depends on others treating you well. Facing fear. Moments that require courage. Speaking up for what's right, taking necessary risks, confronting difficult truths, provide opportunities to expand your capacity for brave action. Handling success. Achievements test whether you remain humble, generous, and focused on continuing growth rather than becoming arrogant or complacent. Experiencing loss. Setbacks reveal whether you can maintain dignity, hope, and constructive action, even when circumstances are difficult. Interacting with difficult people. Challenging relationships test your patience, compassion, and ability to maintain your values, even when others don't share them. The character measurement. True character is measured not by what you accomplish when everything goes well, but by how you respond when things go wrong. Do you maintain integrity when dishonesty would be profitable? Do you show kindness when others are cruel? Do you persist when obstacles appear? Do you take responsibility when mistakes occur? Do you help others when you're struggling yourself? These questions reveal the depth of your character development and highlight areas needing further strengthening. The long-term character vision. Character development is a lifetime project that requires patience and persistence. Like physical fitness, it requires consistent practice and cannot be achieved through occasional intense efforts. Each day provides new opportunities to strengthen your character muscles through conscious choice and deliberate action. The goal is not perfection, but progress, becoming more consistently the person you aspire to be, regardless of external circumstances. This development serves not only your own well-being, but also contributes to the welfare of everyone whose life you touch. Character is the one thing that can never be taken from you by external forces. Circumstances may change, relationships may end, possessions may be lost, but the strength of character you develop through conscious practice becomes a permanent part of who you are, ultimate source of unshakable inner power. Conclusion. The Unshakable Foundation. The principles in this manual are not merely intellectual concepts to be understood, but practical tools to be used daily. Like any skill, they require practice to develop effectiveness. The goal is not to achieve perfect implementation immediately, but to begin the lifelong journey of conscious character development. Your inner citadel, that core of peace and strength that cannot be shaken by external events, is built through small, consistent choices made repeatedly over time. Each time you choose wisdom over reactivity, acceptance over resistance, courage over comfort, you add another stone to this unshakable foundation. The ancient wisdom of the Stoics remains relevant because it addresses unchanging aspects of human nature. While technologies and societies evolve, the fundamental challenges of being human, dealing with loss, managing emotions, handling difficult people, finding meaning in suffering, remain constant. The tools that helped emperors and slaves 2 millennia ago can help you today. Remember that this is not a path of grim endurance, but of profound liberation. When you no longer need external circumstances to align with your preferences before you can be at peace, you become truly free.
When you stop depending on others' approval for your self-worth, you discover authentic confidence. When you accept responsibility for your responses rather than trying to control events, you find genuine power. The journey begins with a single step, the next choice you make. Will you respond to that challenging person with patience or irritation? Will you face that difficult task with courage or avoidance? Will you accept that setback with grace or resistance? Your inner citadel awaits construction. Every conscious choice is another stone in its foundation. Begin now, continue consistently, and over time, you will develop the unshakable inner strength that no external force can breach. The path is simple but not easy. The rewards are extraordinary but not immediate. The destination is within reach but requires the journey. Your strongest, wisest, most peaceful self is waiting for you to take the first step.